God! Oh, Jesus Christ!
But you kind of get the feeling, as you're making something, that you are really doing something that is quite important here.
The Wicker Man, 1973, is the horror film an entire studio tried to erase. A masterpiece so unsettling that the people who financed it buried the real version for over 50 years.
I think the best film was The Wicker Man.
But the ending you know almost never happened. Did you know the studio demanded a rainstorm save the hero? Or that the original negative was dumped under a British motorway and may still be there today?
It's amongst the top 100 of British films of all time.
Contradict all the styles of the Hammer films that have gone before, using the same artist.
These are 15 hidden truths about The Wicker Man, including why horror's biggest star worked for free. Number 1. The film you saw was a weapon in someone else's war. The Wicker Man was greenlit by Peter Snell, head of British Lion Films. Snell championed the project and approved director Robin Hardy's full 99-minute cut. But before the film was finished, British Lion was taken over by Michael Dealey and Barry Spikings. Dealey inherited the film and he despised it, openly. But his contempt had a second purpose. Dealey was pushing Snell out of the company, and the easiest way to discredit a studio head is to prove his biggest project was a failure. So Dealey ordered 12 minutes cut, stripped the theatrical release, and buried the film as a B-movie, the second half of a double bill behind Nicholas Roeg's Don't Look Now. A film about a man burned alive as a sacrifice was itself sacrificed for boardroom politics. The double bill format, it is worth noting, had already been abandoned by most British cinemas by 1973. Dealey revived the dead format specifically to humiliate the movie.
And so they fiddled about with it like mad and took it out of the director's hands and much shorter movie out of it.
Number 2. The negatives may be under a highway. When director Robin Hardy tried to restore his original cut in 1976, he asked EMI, which had absorbed British Lion, for the 368 cans of unedited negative. They could not find them. Barry Spikings first said the negatives were burned during routine vault clearance. When that did not satisfy Hardy, Spikings reportedly walked into a construction site and pointed to a hole in the ground. The cans, he claimed, had been used as landfill during the construction of the M3 motorway outside Shepperton Studios. Christopher Lee believed until his death in 2015 that the original cut would eventually surface somewhere. It never has.
My belief is that it still exists somewhere, and only a very small number of people know where.
Whether the negatives were deliberately destroyed, carelessly discarded, or literally paved over remains one of cinema's most unsettling, unsolved questions. Somewhere beneath miles of asphalt and exhaust fumes, the complete Wicker Man may still exist, sealed in rusting cans, in permanent darkness, like a body that was never meant to be found.
The people who lived in the area were absolutely tremendous. I mean, they really made the movie because in terms of, you had to have that crowd.
Number 3. Christopher Lee worked for free and then paid to promote the film himself. By 1973, Lee was trapped. Decades of Hammer horror films had cemented him as Dracula, and no serious director would cast him as anything else. When screenwriter Anthony Schaefer, fresh from the Tony Award-winning play Sleuth and Hitchcock's Frenzy,
I had, for quite an appreciable period of time, wanted to do a film in the, for want of a better word, horror movie genre, without it actually following in the rather tired footsteps of Hammer films.
Wrote the role of Lord Summerisle, he wrote it specifically for Lee. A charming, intellectual, terrifying villain who never raises his voice and never bears a fang. Lee wanted the role so badly that he waived his entire fee. He signed a contract for 0 pay, and he kept that contract for the rest of his life, to prove it to people who did not believe him.
Christopher Lee cooperated magnificently in helping us publicize this movie, often going to small towns like Jacksonville, Mississippi.
My work goes forward day and night.
After the studio buried the film's release, Lee went further. He personally telephoned critics and reviewers across London, begging them to see the movie. Then he funded his own promotional tour across the United States, paying for every flight, every hotel, every screening out of his own pocket. A man who had played Dracula, Scaramanga, Saruman, and Count Dooku called this his greatest role. Not the one that paid the most, the one that paid nothing.
The movie really had potential as an art house type film.
Number 4. The studio wanted Rain to save the hero. This is the kind of detail that reveals how completely the executives misunderstood the film they owned. Studio notes from British Lion suggest that executives proposed an alternate ending in which a sudden rainstorm extinguishes the flames of the burning Wicker Man, sparing Sergeant Howie's life. Hardy refused. The entire architecture of the screenplay, the slow, careful luring of Howie to the island, the false investigation, the elaborate Mayday trap, depends on the ending being irreversible. Rain would have turned a film about the terrifying logic of sacrifice into a conventional rescue story. It would have erased the film's entire thesis, that Howie's faith does not save him, and Summerisle's faith may not save them either. Hardy's refusal to soften the ending is almost certainly what accelerated the studio's decision to bury the film.
About 5 years ago, I think I went through a stage where I'd just watch it constantly.
Number 5. They filmed spring in the dead of a Scottish winter. The entire story takes place during the first days of May. Flowers blooming, crops growing, warm sunlight.
It contradicts all the styles of the Hammer films that have gone before, using the same artists. I mean, Ingrid Pitt and Christopher Lee. You must think, oh, this is going to be a typical Hammer film, and it isn't.
The production shot in October and November 1972 on the Scottish coast, where conditions were brutal. Actors sucked ice cubes between takes so their breath would not show on camera. The crew glued plastic blossoms to bare trees by hand, branch by branch. Production designer Seamus Flannery drove a truck loaded with artificial plants to each location, wiring fake flowers to living branches so they would sway naturally in the wind. The camera crew stayed at a distance during many outdoor shots, not for artistic reasons, but because goosebumps were visible on the actor's skin if the lens got too close. Edward Woodward, who spent multiple scenes barefoot and lightly dressed, warmed his feet between takes on Ingrid Pitt's thighs. She later said of the Scottish conditions, "In Scotland, that is not funny." South Africa doubled for the film's aerial shots of the island, because the budget could not afford to make Scotland look like Scotland in spring. Number 6. Britt Ekland's most famous scene is not Britt Ekland. The film's most iconic sequence, Willow's naked dance against the bedroom wall, was built on a deception the actress did not discover until after filming.
Britt Ekland, at the time, she was a celebrity and a good name for the picture and had all the qualities that you needed for Willow in terms of the temptations that she was about to put in front of Howie.
Ekland had agreed to perform the scene topless on the condition that she would only be filmed from the waist up. She was pregnant at the time and wanted those limits respected. After shooting her portion, the crew told her they were done for the night. She left the set. A second limousine was waiting behind hers.
At the same time, it varies incredibly from being very atmospheric to suddenly almost becoming a musical.
Am I not young and fair?
Inside, lying flat so Ekland would not see her, was a body double, a woman named Lorraine Peters. As soon as Ekland's car pulled away, Peters stepped out and finished the scene from the waist down. Ekland's voice was also replaced in the film. Every line of dialogue, every lyric of Willow's song, dubbed by Scottish jazz singer Annie Ross. To this day, when fans approach Ekland to sign photographs from the nude scene, she declines. She points out correctly that the body in those frames is not hers. Her boyfriend at the time, Rod Stewart, was so furious that he reportedly attempted to buy every existing print of the film so he could destroy them all. Number 7. The GOAT got the last word.
And all through my friendship with Tony, we used to play games with each other. So the idea came to do a story in which an entire community played a game on one person, and that's exactly what the film is.
For the film's climax, director Robin Hardy built a 36-foot wicker effigy on the cliffs overlooking the Solway Firth, and set it on fire with Edward Woodward inside. Not a stunt double, Woodward. The actor had deliberately refused to visit the set or see the structure before the cameras rolled. He wanted his reaction to be real.
Oh God! Oh Jesus Christ!
But you kind of get the feeling, as you're making something, that you are really doing something that is quite important here.
When the crew dragged him over the hilltop and the towering figure came into view for the first time, his scream, "Oh God! Oh Jesus Christ!" was not acting. It was genuine shock. Hardy later confirmed, the stunned look on Howie's face when he first sees it was not acting. Up until then, Edward had only seen drawings.
What are you going to call it? And he said, The Wicker Man. And I said, has that got anything to do with druids and their sacrifices? And he said, I hate you, because I was almost the only person probably who knew what the Wicker Man really represented, pagan sacrifice.
Woodward was then hoisted up a ladder by a Scottish wrestler and placed inside the burning structure alongside the director and a cameraman. Above them, pinned in a compartment, was a goat named Touchwood. Terrified by the smoke and flames, Touchwood urinated through the slats and directly onto Woodward's head. The actor later said the Wicker Man sequence was the most frightening experience of his 60-year career. He also broke a toe the day before, being dragged barefoot up the rocky hillside. He filmed the burning scene the next morning anyway.
And we very quickly came up against a brick wall, which was that the negative no longer existed.
Number 8. Howie's final prayer was the actor's own idea. In the screenplay, Sergeant Howie goes to his death in silence. Woodward thought that was wrong. He believed a man of Howie's absolute, unbending faith would not die quietly. He would pray. Woodward himself suggested that Howie sing Psalm 23, "The Lord is my shepherd," as the flames rose around him. Hardy agreed. The prayer that audiences hear in the finished film was never in any draft of the script. It was Woodward's contribution, drawn from his understanding of a man who would find comfort in Scripture even while burning alive. It is also what gives the ending its unbearable tension between two competing convictions, the pagan singing their harvest hymn outside the Wicker Man, while the Christian recites his psalm inside it. Neither side doubts. That is what makes it horrifying.
I think I was enormously impressed by the script, actually, because usually I used to read horror scripts, and this was not a horror script. This had so much depth.
Number 9. The screenwriter engineered the audience as the final victim.
It also gives them very strongly a sense of how difficult it really is to work in the movie business. And their best work is hidden, trashed, reviled, stamped on.
Anthony Shaffer did not write a horror movie. He wrote a trap, and the audience was inside it. Shaffer had made his name with Sleuth, a play constructed entirely around deception, where the audience only realizes how thoroughly they have been manipulated after the final twist. He applied identical logic to the Wicker Man. Every scene is designed so the viewer shares Howie's certainty that he is in control. Howie investigates, Howie interrogates, Howie finds clues. The audience believes, just as Howie does, that they are watching a detective story. They are not. They are watching a man walk willingly into a trap that was set before he even arrived on the island. Shaffer later explained his approach by asking one question: what makes the perfect sacrifice? The answer, embedded in the structure of the film itself, is a man who comes of his own free will, who is a servant of the law, who is a virgin, and who is a fool. Every scene Howie experiences is part of the Islander's test, confirming he meets each condition. The audience only realizes they were watching a ritual, not an investigation, at the same moment Howie does.
We both liked horror films. We both crossed town to go and see the latest Hammer. But we felt that horror films, as they were done at the time, were missing something.
Number 10. The actress who played a white witch may have been one. Diane Salento, who plays Miss Rose, the school teacher who instructs children in pagan ritual, had a personal connection to the material that went beyond acting. Salento claimed at the time of filming to practice as a white witch. She designed the poster that hangs on the ceiling of the Green Man Inn herself, artwork originally created for a personal tarot card project. During the fire leap sequence, Salento personally assisted with choreography and appeared in her own white robes. Her involvement blurred the line between performance and belief in ways that unsettled other members of the cast. She was, at the time, recently divorced from Sean Connery.
And by a weird collection of circumstances, the only long print available, I guess, in the world was the one we had.
Number 11. Peter Cushing was supposed to be the sacrifice.
And it should be considered a cautionary tale. You know, watch this, it can happen. Avoid it.
Before Edward Woodward was cast, 3 other actors were offered the role of Sergeant Howie. Robin Hardy's first choice was Michael York. York declined. Hardy then approached David Hemmings, who also declined. Christopher Lee, drawing on decades of horror film camaraderie, personally offered the part to his close friend Peter Cushing. Cushing wanted to accept, but could not.
Well, originally, rumour has it that Peter Cushing was supposed to play Sergeant Howie, and Cushing said that Christopher Lee had asked him, and the only reason he didn't do it was because he had other commitments.
A scheduling conflict prevented him from committing. It was producer Peter Snell who finally suggested Woodward, a television actor best known for the spy series Callan.
I was responsible, I think, for Woodward because Callan was a big television series in England at the time, and he just was a great name for us.
Hardy initially resisted. He wanted someone younger, but Woodward's audition convinced him, and the casting proved essential. Woodward brought a rigid, moralistic severity to Howie that a younger, more conventionally handsome actor would not have delivered. The character needed to be slightly insufferable, a man whose own righteousness makes him blind to the trap closing around him.
They had in mind a very unusual project and they wanted me to play one of the leads. So I went there and we chatted and talked. They weren't very specific, either of them. All that was discussed was the fact that they were going to write the part for me.
Number 12. One man's obsession rescued the film from extinction. When Robin Hardy learned the negatives were gone, there was one remaining copy of the longer cut anywhere on Earth. Years earlier, Dealey had sent a print to American producer Roger Corman to evaluate for U.S. distribution.
It's amongst the top 100 of British films of all time.
Corman, the legendary king of B-movies, had watched it, declined to distribute it, and filed the print in his archive. That was the same man who had suggested cutting the film down in the first place. Yet his habit of never throwing anything away meant that when Hardy came looking, Corman's copy, a single videotape of the 99-minute version, was the only surviving record of the original edit. From that copy, Hardy reconstructed a 95-minute version that was screened across America in 1977. It was eventually released on home video. Every director's cut and final cut you have ever seen originates from that one tape sitting in a filing cabinet in Roger Corman's office. The image quality of the restored footage is visibly degraded compared to the rest of the film, a permanent scar that tells you exactly where the studio's knife went in.
Tony was looking to do something with the horror genre that was a little more intellectual. Christopher was anxious to break away from what he'd done extremely well with, of course, all the classic horror stuff.
Number 13. The film arrived the same year as The Exorcist, and nobody noticed. The Wicker Man opened in London on December 6, 1973. Weeks later, The Exorcist opened in the United States and became the highest-grossing horror film in history. Both movies are fundamentally about the collision between ancient belief and modern certainty. Both end with a man of faith dying for his convictions. But while The Exorcist was backed by a $12 million budget and a massive studio campaign, The Wicker Man limped into theaters as the second feature on the double bill that most audiences ignored. The irony is precise. One film about sacrifice was given everything. The other was sacrificed. Half a century later, The Wicker Man is cited as the direct ancestor of Ari Aster's Midsommar, the defining horror film of a new generation. The Exorcist spawned sequels. The Wicker Man spawned a genre.
Christopher and Robin Hardy, you probably know, working with another small independent, began to work about 30 prints around the country.
Number 14. The 2006 remake destroyed the film's reputation, and then accidentally restored it. Nicolas Cage's 2006 version of The Wicker Man is, by most accounts, one of the worst horror remakes ever produced. The bear suit, the bees, the unhinged shouting, every scene that became an internet meme pushed the original further into obscurity. For years, when anyone mentioned The Wicker Man, the response was laughter. But the memes had an unintended consequence. Millions of people who had never heard of the 1973 film looked it up out of curiosity, expecting another bad movie, and found a masterpiece instead. The contrast between the two versions became its own form of advertising. The original film's cult following surged precisely because the remake was so comprehensively terrible. In 2013, a 35mm print was discovered at the Harvard Film Archive, the same cut Hardy had assembled for U.S. distribution in 1979. It became the basis for the Final Cut restoration, bringing the film closer to Hardy's vision than any version released in 40 years.
And so he was just the one guy in America for this market who I felt could give us an idea of how this picture could be made to play, what approach we would take to marketing.
The Wicker Man, now please start and take your seats.
The business, as you probably know, is run mostly by zombies who are overpaid and are so timid that all they can do is reproduce something that's already been done a trillion times. And so we were very fortunate that this picture, which had not been done a trillion times or even once, has succeeded.
I think the cult of the Wicker.
Number 15. The film is a mirror, and you are Howie. Here is what the Wicker Man understood in 1973 that most horror films still refuse to accept. The monster is not the thing that is different from you. The monster is the thing that is exactly like you, but pointed in a direction you cannot follow. Lord Summerisle is not evil. He is a man who believes so completely in his community's survival that he will burn another man alive to protect it. Sergeant Howie is not good. He is a man so certain of his own moral authority that he walks into an obvious trap because he cannot imagine being wrong. The film does not ask you to choose between them.
The net result was that it did not have the kind of showing that it deserved.
It asked you to recognize that you are already one of them, and that the other one terrifies you for exactly that reason. The burned version, the buried negatives, the studio sabotage, the highway grave, all of it only proves the film's central argument. When something threatens the way power operates, it does not get debated. It gets destroyed. And then, sometimes, it refuses to stay dead. So here is the question worth asking. If the original negative is still under that highway, sealed in darkness for over 50 years, what exactly are we afraid of finding? If this changed how you see the film, hit like and subscribe, because the films you thought you knew have more to say than anyone wanted you to hear.